I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the regular meeting of the Kaneland Board of Education. We would like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. And please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Here.
Mrs. Junk. Here. Mr. Carey.
Here.
Dr. Lawler.
Here.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Here.
Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
With 7 members present, we do have a quorum. Anything board members want to move from consent to new business? See anything? Okay, if not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second. And a roll call, please.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board Superintendent salutes, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Layden.
Yes, thank you. Tonight, we do not have any specific report tonight, but I do want to note that on our next meeting on May 8th, we will have, Julie Orfel has invited our retirees and our 25-year recognition staff to attend the next meeting. So it'll be nice to have about 15 to 17 that will be attending. Nice opportunity to recognize our retirees. And then also at that second meeting, that is the first or second day of the week of teacher appreciation. So we'll also take a moment to have a teacher appreciation recognition and our retirees and 25-year recognition at the next meeting. So that's all I have for tonight.
Okay. Dr. Woods, anyone? Okay. Tonight's consent agenda contains the following action items: the approval of accounts payable and payroll from April 2023, the approval of the minutes of the April 10th, 2023 regular meeting, the approval of personnel, the approval of the student handbook on second reading, the approval of policies from press on second reading, the approval of non-speak educational support staff salary increases and substitute seasonal rates for 2023-2024, the approval of Valley salary and benefit recommendations for 2023-2024, the approval of administrative contracts and salary increases for 2023-2024, and the following informational items: the student suspension data report, the third quarter budget update for 2022 to 2023, the Freedom of Information Act FOIA report, and field trip notifications. So I will entertain a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankivsky.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Public comment. Is there anyone signed up? Okay, no one is signed up, but we do have time here. Would anyone like to make a public comment at this first opportunity? There will be another one at the end of the meeting. Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to new business. The first item is the approval of the health insurance renewal for 2023-2024.
You okay, Dr. Fuchs?
I think so.
Okay, we'll go ahead and turn that over to
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Our health insurance committee was very busy this year. We continue to look for opportunities for savings. Most of the things that we look at need to wait at this point because they're a part of our collective bargaining. But to do the homework and the research beforehand is always helpful. And then we can have that information updated when it's time. Excuse me. Tonight's report includes a lot of data. Sorry. I've got the dependent information on the first page of the plan. You will see that we increased employees by 6, but we removed 32 dependents for a variety of reasons. By the employee's choice, we don't force people off the plan or have any rules against that. It's just the way that it works out when people come and go in terms of their employment. So, that's the update on the employees, for the plan. The KEBTF, we've been monitoring very closely this year. We started the year very low. The KEBTF is the, Kaneland Employee Benefit Trust Fund.
Thank you.
It is the fund where we keep the money for our health insurance. The district's health insurance is a self-insured plan, and so the district contributes money every payroll, and the employees contribute money every payroll. That money goes into the KEBTF, the Kaneland Employee Benefit Trust Fund. When claims come in, we pay them. When bills come in, we pay them, and the money goes in and out. The committee is responsible for monitoring that. And it, as I mentioned, at the beginning of this year, it started very low. However, we are finally moving in a positive direction for a couple months, so that's very good. We believe that COVID did have quite a bit of an impact on the fund, so we're waiting to see the long term, another year or so, if that fund will come up and the balance. How did COVID have an impact on the fund? With the additional claims and costs associated with COVID. All of the COVID tests, where all of us get them for free, the plan pays for it. Okay, and so those kinds of costs, plus any associated illnesses, the claims we would pay those claims. So, but again, we're moving in the right direction. We're not there yet. We're at about 1.6 million. Best practice would say that you have 3 to 4 months on hand for those rainy days. And that would be about 2.4 to 3.2 million. So while we do have a ways to go, we're feeling a little bit better about that. So we do not have any recommendations at this time for changes for the fund. In terms of renewal, our renewal comes right from Blue Cross Blue Shield. We have fixed costs, and then we have expected claims. On an annual basis, Blue Cross Blue Shield is very good at what they do in predicting the number and amount of claims. And that is about 92% of our plan. Our fixed costs now only represent about 8% of our plan. Our fixed costs did increase slightly at 4.1%, or about $39,000. Our broker, Stephen Morkos, of Hub International, has been with the district for over 20 years, and he works diligently to try to keep those fixed costs low. Please remember, at the last board meeting, the board approved a new broker. It will be the Horton Group, and Rick Klein will lead that group. And so next year, we'll have a learning curve, both in my office and for the committee, with a new broker to work with. Our expected claims is increasing about 11.3% for medical, and there is no increase in dental. Between the two of them, it comes out to about 9.8%, or approximately 903,000, of which about 780,000 is the district's portion. The rest would be on the employees. Typically in December, when I do our financial projections, I use a placeholder of 5%. That placeholder held about 590,000, so that's about 190,000 more than I had planned for next year's budget. Please remember, this is the time of the year when numbers are shifting daily. You get a new number for this, it goes up. You get another number for that, it goes down. I will bring the tentative budget to you in June with everything that I have at that time. Please also remember that tentative budget revenues at that time, I won't have everything. We never do, but we'll predict to the best of our ability with what we do know. Our health insurance committee has been very diligent about increasing the communications to our employees. With a self-insured plan, we feel that by increased communication and encouraging wellness, we can help control the costs of our plan. Additionally, we added the Hinge Health, which some of our employees are taking advantage of and have found it to be very valuable. On page 3 of the memo, quite a while ago now, we divided up our plan, our premiums, into 4 groups. A long time ago, it used to be 2, single and family. This doesn't affect or change the cost of any premiums. What it does is it redistributes the costs into 4 different groups: single, single plus spouse, single plus children, and then family. And then the multipliers are on the next page, and those are given to us by our broker at Blue Cross to help determine what percent makes most sense to have for those premiums. We do carry a specific stop loss so that if anybody has unusually high claims, we have extra coverage for that. And our current stop loss deductible is $175,000. This year, we've only had 1 person hit the stop loss, so that's really good. But it also emphasizes the need for that coverage, because if you have multiple, like I believe last year we had 4, so it ebbs and flows each year. You have to have that coverage so that your self-insured plan doesn't lose too much of its money in claims. On page 4, I have a table with premium increases year over year, beginning with the year 2014-15. You can see that they've ebbed and flowed with some really high years and some really low years. Our average from 2014 to 2024 is 5.9%. So we believe that that's very fair to our employees. It's just unfortunate that a lot of the higher years are recent. I've already talked about the tier structure, and then the multipliers are on the next page. I've got the change in the census on there just so that you can see which tiers are increasing and which tiers are decreasing. And then in terms of the work of the Health Insurance Committee, we've been busy implementing voluntary benefits, which provide benefits to our employees, but at no cost to the district. I talked about Hinge Health. That one is specific for orthopedic exercises and joints. That was an area, if you remember from last year's report, where we had a lot of claims. So this is to be preventative and proactive to try to eliminate some of the issues before they become where you need surgery and things like that. So it's going very well. This year we also explored spousal surcharges, where if a spouse has access to another plan for him or her, that they would either have to get off of our plan or pay a surcharge to stay on our plan. And so while we're not recommending that at this time, that may be something that the board will see come back in the future, particularly with our negotiations coming up in the future next year. And then lastly, other opportunities for plan savings. We regularly look at different vendors. Our broker helps us with that. They go out to the market and they try to get different coverages at better rates. At this time, we are feeling that the information we've been given is probably the best that we can do based on their research and homework. The committee has reached consensus with thumbs up that they want to recommend this to the board. Our broker also regularly gives us, updates and helps us through all of the Affordable Care Act, requirements and reporting. And, in conclusion, first I want to thank Adam for serving as the Health Insurance Board Liaison. And then our members of the committee include myself, Patty Reeder from the KEA co-chairs with me, John Ahern, Travis Bird, Barb Bradford, our benefits administrator, Kelly Gavin, Rebecca Kennedy, Christy Kukovic, Rebecca Mann, Kirsten Murphy, Stephanie Ortegal, Susan Poshton, Lisa Pitstick, and Tiffany Reuter. We try to get representatives from each building so that those representatives can go back, answer questions, and communicate to staff. And so next year we will add somebody from the Learning Academy so that they can go back and do the same. Again, our committee is thankful for Stephen Morkos and his team as they have served the district for over 20 years. We will have one more meeting in May to finish our meetings for the year. Do any board members have any questions?
I'm just curious. If you look at your chart on page 3,
Did not match.
no, it doesn't. There's a couple that, like, from the upper level to the lower level, like, numbers off a few cents, few dollars.
I can look at that. You mean when you add them?
No, like, if you look at tier 4 family for speak versus non-speak, it's,
Oh, the pennies are off.
is it, it's just,
It's just it's the rounding.
okay,
Yeah. So you take the total, divide it by 12,
gotcha. Okay,
and then the multipliers. Yeah, that's probably the biggest one, and it's like $1 something off,
okay, there's no difference, it's just, okay, that was,
rounding.
okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
you bet.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing nothing else, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approves the following recommendation from the Health Insurance Committee and approve the premium increase of 9.8% for the 2023-2024 school year.
Moved. Second.
In a roll call, please.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Bye.
Motion carries 7-0. Item J2 is the approval of the science units of studies, materials, and associated new adopted funding for 2023-2024.
Yes, thank you. I will turn this one over to Dr. Mum and Mr. Raleigh. They're going to walk us through not only just the science piece for this year, but the rotation annually and how we going about making sure that our curriculum across the district is reviewed on a regular basis.
So annually at this time, we kind of conclude our curriculum review with board approval on both of our units of study as well as the funding to support materials for those units of study. At the same time, we start the kickoff this month for next year's cycle. You can see in the top of the board memo, it is about a 3-year process when you implement something. You essentially review it in 1 year. Best practice in research and curriculum would say you want to review every curriculum every 5 to 7 years. Currently, we're at probably somewhere between 7 to 10 because of the slowdown with the pandemic and unable to meet in certain cases. And previous to that, we had a large math review that with kind of a fixed curriculum budget, we had to implement over a couple years. So when you do a roll-in adoption, it sets back that structure of trying to get to 5 to 7 years. We are dedicated to trying to get closer to that 5 to 7 because we know content does shift. Standards don't always shift, but the materials that are out there to teach that curriculum obviously shifts over the course of 5 to 7. And when you get into 7 to 10, that's a bit too long according to research. So you can see on the year of curriculum cycle, we do convene by asking members who is interested in joining the review cycle in April for the next year. And so last April, we asked for our science volunteers. This April, we're asking for our social science volunteers. We then bring those members together in September, typically after September 15th, to start the process of really looking at our reported standards, our proficiency tables, have national standards changed, what does our student achievement data look like, and kind of vetting what major curriculum changes we want to do first. Over the course of September, October, November, the team works together to construct proficiency tables based on every reported standard identified for that content area, and then starts to look at what units of study kind of go where and when per grade level. The NGSS standards, the national standards, did not change for the science review, so most of our units of study really stayed in alignment with them. I know on the K-5 units of study, we do teach some of it within the core content classroom, and then other units we teach within the critical thinking exploratory. So we talk about at the committee level, do we want to shift any of those to the critical thinking exploratory or to core content, or a grade level up or down? All of that work typically concludes around December, January, and that's then when we go out and vet tools to meet the needs of how to deliver the curriculum that we just drafted. We always want to draft the curriculum first because that tells our learning expectations before we looked at products, because you don't want to see the product as the curriculum. The curriculum is really the proficiency tables and units of study. So we did vet many vendors through the month of December, January. We even had some come back in February a couple times. And what we have kind of looked at and come to conclusion after looking at them, vetting them, having some professional development with multiple vendors, is the recommendation to go with discovery science at all levels. So we will be consistent K-12. We'll dive into specifically what products are being recommended in just a minute. Ultimately, then the team comes back and looks at what professional development needs to be in place, and they plan professional development as kind of their last culminating time together in March. And then we deliver that message at the road shows here in spring and April of what are we adopting, what professional development is available in the summer, and when will it be available again on contract after August 14th as of next year. At the same time, like I said before, we start gathering our volunteers to start this whole thing again. When you adopt in that curriculum review is what I just outlined, but then the first year of adoption, we really look at how are the materials working to meet the needs of the units of study, and ask the committee members and teachers through our educator advisory councils, building leadership teams, curriculum meetings, department chair meetings, how are the tools meeting your needs to make sure you're delivering the content appropriately. And at the conclusion of the second year, the first is the review cycle, the second year is the first adoption, we start to talk about what is the best way to assess the new content that we had. And so assessment and rewriting assessments doesn't happen until you've actually spent almost a year with the new products and the new curriculum. And so that's why you can see on the front page of the memo, you have the review year, initial adoption. Sometimes we choose to pilot things for a year and then make a final adoption decision. And then you'll see assessment kind of come in that last part, either in year 2 or year 3, depending on how you have that cycle. And so you can see this year we finished up word study because that was one that we piloted. And so we have word study also being purchased because it was an extended year. It was initial review, pilot, now final adoption, and we will implement word study next year as well. So sometimes they overlap in that manner. We always like to try to project out 8 to 10 years just so that we can make sure that we're kind of making sure all curriculum is covered. That's what the committee does and kind of how the curriculum review cycle works. You can see on the K-5 units of study, again, we really kept the units of study at the same grade level. The team at K-5 really felt that the content was appropriate at the grade level where it was, and what was done in the core was manageable and doable versus what was in critical thinking. So we kept very consistent based on the NGSS standards and the units of study scope and sequence. K-5 then did, as I mentioned, look to adopt discovery science. The DEX platform is a science discovery platform in which a teacher can go on with all of those units of study and find lessons, materials, videos, supplemental things, as well as core content to deliver all of the units of study. And then K-5 is also going to adopt from discovery upon approval from the board. Don't want to get ahead of myself. The mystery science kits, many of our teachers have been using mystery science for quite a few years now, but we want to adopt it whole scale as a K-5 district. rather than just by teacher. And they send out weekly a science concept to kind of discover, hypothesize, investigate, and then they kind of towards the end of that discovery, you end up understanding why something is happening. For the first year, we are recommending to the board that we purchase the consumable material kits from Mystery Science, but we did not do a 5-year subscription like we did for the platform and Mystery Science, because we want to see after 1 year what consumables are actually something we use and what can we replace by maybe Amazon or Target or other trips rather than through the company. And that was a recommendation from the Discovery Company that many districts order the full kit the first year, but then the consumables are really vetted to see what is used in the following years. Patrick is going to go over then that same committee. We meet EC12, and so we follow the same kind of sequence for our review cycle. He's going to go over the 612 units, and then he'll wrap up explaining a bit more on the budget recommendation that we're asking for tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Mum. Outlined in the memo starts out by taking a look at our middle school units of study. Similar to the elementary schools, the units themselves have not changed much. They are comprised of the next generation science standards, and we go through a similar process. So we start this whole thing looking at just vertical alignment from the elementaries to the middle schools to the high schools. We'll talk about a little bit about the high school courses that we looked at. And then once we've had those unit of studies identified, we start to look at making sure that any mandated unit of study through the state is covered, that there is that fidelity check with the national standards, in this case, the NGSS. Middle school, we embed the content with the scientific practices. So we're teaching students skills of asking questions, conducting and carrying out experiments, using and analyzing and interpreting data, and then we embed the content through those skills. So as they go through their middle school experience from 6th through 8th grade, they're honing those skills that are universal scientific practices, and then we use the content at each grade level differs from between 6th, 7th, and 8th to embed the content in those scientific practices. Our high school units of study. Our high school units of study, it's same exact process. We met with our team after we were together district-wide. We broke out into grade spans. We had teacher representatives from each of the 4 requirements for graduation, which are environmental science, physics, chemistry, and biology. We worked with our instructional coaches and administration from the building, and again, outlined very, very similar units of study, updated some of the content, but again, making sure that those standards that are outlined through the next generation science standards, these 4 graduation required courses are next gen science courses. On the front side of the memo, in a couple years, it looks at the exploratories and the elective, the required courses through this full scale science review, and then we will look at elective courses once that piece comes up for a district-wide review that has the support financially from the educational services. Our elective courses do get looked at through a high school curriculum committee for any small changes, and then those come to the board through the course book approval process. So that is, again, the recommendation being presented tonight looks at 2 different pieces. It's the units of study, K-12, and then we also are asking for approval for the budget and how that's going to be spent on our materials and some of the licenses for next year. So before going to that budget piece, is there any curricular questions?
Will, Mr. Raleigh, will the textbooks be available in audio form for the visually impaired, SLV population? We have that. And electronic delivery in the case of visually impaired?
Great question. We are going almost entirely digital through this because any materials we need can be printed out. So when we look at how this budget breaks down and we talk about some of those materials, the tech book is the textbook, and all of those things can be done. There's speech to text or text to speech. There's interactive videos. There's multiple modalities of presenting that information, and all of that is done with each of our students being able to have a Chromebook. All of that can be housed and accessed through their Chromebook, And then if we have students that do need a printed version, in talking with the company and learning from past experiences, we have really moved away from those printable, consumable worksheet type things. There are some consumables that come with more of like laboratories and experiments, but we have found less and less of a desire to have a physical printed out workbook or textbook. So anything that is needed through that delivery is done through the tech book, which is a digital interactive textbook.
Also comes in 8 languages, like the book and the mystery science.
But, so the text is not organically audio, it relies upon the text-to-speech feature or software of the Chromebook? Is that,
If I'm understanding your question, if a student goes onto the tech book and needs the audio feature, does it automatically play for them?
well, what I'm asking is, I have noticed in the past, having taught special ed science specifically, at least with respect to chemistry and physics, there's a difference between the texts that organically are audiobooks as opposed to text to speech, which tend to be a lot more burdensome for the special ed teacher and others, because just personal experience, text to speech is at best, you back me up on it, imperfect. And especially when we're talking, maybe not so much chemistry, well, in physics, yeah, in physics it did. I'm thinking of the vocabulary-driven science like biology.
Yep.
Biology is almost, life science is almost entirely vocabulary-driven. But I ran into this in teaching chemistry and physics too, but not as much as biology. There is a difference.
Yep.
Text-to-speech, I think you will find among special education teachers, and more importantly, special education students, they will do better with an organically produced original audiobook than trying to run it through text-to-speech.
And those are embedded in there, and that is also what that DEX platform provides. There's also videos that accompany each of the lessons. All of those pieces are in it. It is quite the 21st, that's a little outdated term now, but 21st century tool for students to have. And that is one of the things in looking at, I think, overall combined with elementary, we probably looked at 15 different vendors. And this one was the most adaptable for all of our students.
So it doesn't strictly rely upon text-to-speech. Okay, that's going to be important. That's really important.
And they have closed captioning, I believe, on most of our videos as well. We definitely have some staff, I know, in our group looking at a lot of those functionalities as built in the system.
Right.
Yep.
As
And
opposed to
some-
having to rely upon software, external software to do the, okay.
And analytics built in for teachers to look at Lexile levels, ability to adapt some of that text, same content, but adapt some of the text that is, or stories that are.
Yeah. Okay. Particularly at the lower grade levels, that you're referring to there. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Are we at 1-to-1 for all grades now?
Seconds, I believe,
Second.
with Chromebooks.
So if this is all electronic, what are we doing for K and first grade?
They have iPads within the K-1 rooms. It's adaptable, and they do it on the iPad as well.
Okay.
And so although they're not 1-to-1, we consider 1-to-1 when you're able to take that device it's assigned to you when you go home.
Mhm.
K-1 still is 1-to-1 on campus
Okay.
with iPads.
I thought yes, thank you.
Just don't take them home.
And this is the first year with second grade.
Yeah.
I was
So we
confused by second when he said
lowered
home
that. It
because
used to be third grade where we had a take home device, and now we have our second graders that have a Chromebook that are taking.
This is random. When did we move to second with the Chromebooks? Because I thought we were only doing third, and then my son.
They just said
Here.
it.
Just this year.
Okay.
last summer they did the, agreements and looked at the one-to-one handbook and all of that was part of second grade, starting
Got it.
in that June process.
Thanks.
The last part on here is the budget breakdown. So this looks at our local budget for the Educational Service Department. It totals up to $400,000. That is an amount that is approved by the board annually. Sometimes that has fluctuated in the past, but the numbers you see on here are broken down. There's a few up top. If you look at those first 3 rows that are carryovers from previous years, those have been previously approved by the board. And as Dr. Mumm explained sometimes how we have to extend that through a couple different years. There are some of those, if you look at the Discovery Science or Social Studies, that first one for 11,000, sometimes in order to help offset some costs, if we can pay that out over our contracts might be a payment every 5 or 6 years. So those first few non-bolded items have already been approved by the Board of Education. The bolded items are what we are proposing, and that came from our work, again, going and looking at different vendors. Once we decided, and very excited to have a unified curricular tool, K-12, the bolded items are what we're going to be purchasing. They are, to try to best align to our curriculum review cycle, they are 6-year license. So we do have options for 1, 5, and 6. The larger the commitment that we have, it helps offset some of those costs again, and then it lines up with our review cycle. So when we get those, when we get a 6-year license, that usually spans the time that we have until science comes up again, and then we are able to financially support the decisions next time we get through that review cycle. So the way it breaks down, again, looking at the elementary school, there is that DEX platform. DEX platform involves videos, PDFs, that is content that is curated from Discovery Education, but I believe, I don't want to say everyone because I'm a little cautious to that, but in every circumstance that I can think of, those are curated by content and mostly former science teachers that now work for the company. So they look at the content to make sure that it aligns to the next generation science standards. There's that tech book piece, that interactive textbook that we mentioned, and Mystery Science, again, is weekly. It's a weekly subscription to the exploration of science for our youngest primary students. The same holds true for 6, 8, and 9, 12. We're purchasing both the tech book and the DEX platform. So new content is uploaded. It is multimodal. So there are videos, there are just different hooks to engage students. And then if we scroll down a little bit, there's about $51,000 that is used. This will be a year 1 or first year purchase. That is the consumables, and those directly align to the units of study. For 612, it is aligned. It's the exact materials that are needed for experiments and labs. And what we then can do, again, from the recommendation of the company, we get it for the first year, and then we can see what is best for us to purchase any renewable. We do have some renewable resources already that we can re-up all of our materials, or most of our materials, in the years to come. So that 51,000 is looking at the first year of purchasing consumable materials. All of those should add up to 400,000.
And Dr. Fuchs, is that the budgeted amount?
It is what I put in the financial projection model.
Placeholder, okay.
And the last point to point out is anytime we purchase or purchase a new curricular tool, that does go on public display for 30 days. So we do have logins, we do have access to the materials for the public. If they want to see any of this, they can contact our office, and we will have that on display for 30 days upon approval before purchasing, and purchasing would start with the new fiscal year on July 1st. Yes.
And you're satisfied with the articulation between middle school science, what's covered in middle school science in these texts, and what they're likely to see in high school?
Yes, satisfied both ways. We had
Okay.
some time, they're kind of sandwiched in there, so we had some time to look at what the elementary is doing, and knowing that the language, the
Language
tools, all of that is done by the same company, so they know that they're getting something that is aligned to what they're going to instruct with, and then that does then lend itself to the next gen science classes at the high school.
With regard to the consumables, can you source from this company what you need, and then also source from, or is it all or nothing? Because you mentioned Target or Amazon, you can source what you need from them if they are the cheaper or more affordable option.
Yeah, they break it out by experiment or by unit. And they give you everything that you need for a class set to run that, and then, but it does break it down by line item of what you can purchase. Yep.
And the rep has shown us, I know, James, the rep at Discovery has been amazing. He's actually shown us a grid already for the replacements and current costs. And in some places, the replacement kits are cheaper applied through Discovery if you do use all the cotton balls and rulers. But in another one, their replacement kit is found cheaper in 2 other places, and he's shown us that.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, is it
they're
all or
very-
nothing?
He's very good at showing us, like, even if you want to replace blank, you could probably buy it from us cheaper. But if you want to replace this, go somewhere else, and he's been very,
They've been helpful.
very helpful.
The rep is cost conscious.
Yeah, and for them, that's not the heart of the purchase, so I
Sure.
think there's a little bit of wiggle room with that piece.
That makes sense.
Anyone else? Other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are none, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve the science units of study and the proposed plan for expenditures to support the revised science curriculum K-12 in the amount of $400,000.
So moved.
Second.
A roll call, please.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Mrs. Simmons. Aye. Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk. Aye. Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Move on to J3, which is the approval of an additional 1.0 certified full-time equivalent and a 1.0 classified full-time equivalent for an additional primary cross-categorical instructional classroom.
Thank you. As you know, in March, we bring the certified staffing plan to the Board of Education based on the known numbers, based on the known students and known class sizes at that time and sections. But as you know, between March and the beginning of the school year, some things may change. And when those changes occur and we need additional staffing, we bring those back to the board. So this is one of those instances. So Dr. Adkins, I'll turn it over and you can walk us through that, please.
Thank you, absolutely. So as the board may recall, a commonly asked question when it comes to these staffing additions after the minimum staffing plan is kind of that overall, is this something we have to do through some sort of state law, regulation, guidance, whatever, or is it something we would like to do? And this falls into the have to do category because of special education. So as the memo outlines, we have a continuum of services that runs from just a resource check-in all the way up to self-contained. And when it comes to our self-contained cross-categorical instructional classrooms, or CCI classrooms, we house that program at McDowell. We have a primary, which is a K-2 classroom, and an intermediate CCI, which is a 3-5 classroom. Because of the intensity of needs of the students in those classrooms, the state guidelines have those capped at 8 students. Currently for next year, we're projected to have 12 students in the elementary primary CCI classroom with another 2 students that would potentially be staffed in there in the coming weeks. That said, we do need to add another section. We have the classroom space and it is a have to, but because it's a whole new classroom and program, not a new, but another program, we wanted to make sure we brought it to the board's attention for approval. The classroom would require a certified teacher, LBS 1 certified teacher, and a program paraprofessional. The budget amount that we typically use for a certified staff member is $60,000, $30,000 for the classified for the paraprofessional, for a total of a $90,000 impact to the budget. Please know that a portion of that is offset by the special ed categoricals that get reimbursed by the state every year. That's about 10%, so not completely, and it fluctuates. That's why I say about, because it depends on a couple of different variables each year. But approximately the average is about 10% of a reimbursement. The other piece that I'd want the board to know is, as you may have noted in the personnel report tonight, the recall of our support staff members has already begun. We've been able to recall 3 of the 9 affected staff members. This program would, the certified teacher part would be one subject to posting and that kind of thing. However, the program paraprofessional side would be subject to recall. So that would be yet another paraprofessional that we'd be able to recall from the ones that we had to dismiss at our last board meeting. So that would be a good thing. With this addition, we'll be able to have enough space in those 2 classrooms to handle any other students that might move in or be placed into the program over the course of next year. And again, wanted to bring this to the board's attention for approval, even though it is something that we need to do because of state guidelines.
Questions from the board?
So the IDEA funding, 10%? That's,
The state categorical, I believe, is 10%.
oh, the state category.
Yeah. Correct.
So there might be possibility of additional,
I would defer to Dr. Fuchs.
maybe?
Might be
How much will get reimbursed for the staff?
from
It's really
IDEA,
not very much.
not from the state.
It's not IDEA.
Not from
It's
IDEA.
No.
Yeah.
You said there's roughly, what, 12 to 14 students district-wide? Would it make sense to move one of the classrooms to the north end of the district?
That I don't know. Probably have to defer to Mrs. Eggleston on that.
Grant, can you come to the mic?
Come
Sorry.
up to the microphone.
Thank you.
The challenge when you split the classes like that is then you can't use the same related service personnel. So then you probably would have to add additional related services to another building.
For example?
A speech, social work,
Okay.
occupational therapy, physical therapy, and materials, yes.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks for asking that, Ryan. I was wondering the same thing.
But to that point, that's okay. To that point, this is just for certified and classified personnel, not for ancillary service. We're not gonna need any
No, we
additional
don't at this
OT or
point, no.
PT or SLP or,
No.
right? Okay. That can be covered with what's, okay.
You want to consolidate those related services.
Really.
Good.
Everybody good? Okay, I'll entertain a motion that the Board of Education approve an additional 1.0 certified full-time equivalent and 1.0 classified full-time equivalent for an additional primary cross-categorical instructional classroom.
So moved.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Mankowski.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Okay, that concludes new business for tonight. We will move on now to the superintendent and board report.
We have a few updates from committee work. Last week, we hosted the Facility Planning Committee. We meet twice a year in the fall and the spring. One of our major topics last week was an update and feedback on the referendum, the failed referendum from April 4th. So we received some feedback from some of from the committee members and the group members, and then also Dr. Fuchs outlined summer projects and capital projects for the summer. CAC was scheduled for Thursday. Unfortunately, the superintendent looked at a tornado watch across the district, canceled it, and then 45 minutes later, it was nice and sunny. So do my best to be a weatherman and superintendent at the same time, but I didn't do very well on that one. So that meeting has been moved to May 9th. So we still have, that meeting will be May 9th. We've sent that back out to the committee. It'll be at the high school at 7 o'clock. Same 2 topics with Dr. Atkins leading the candidate profile review of a Kaneland candidate profile review. And then also Dr. Birch will be there to give a tour of the Fox Valley Career Center. This is down the road, but Kaneland's high school graduation, just a reminder for board members, you do have an invite and a card and more information will follow from Mrs. Orfel. That is the May 21st at 5 o'clock out at Northern. If you are going to attend, please let us know, and we will make enough room up on the stage to make sure all board members can attend. And then, speaking of board members, May 8th, which is our next board meeting, that is our organization meeting. By then, actually by tomorrow, we will have received the canvassing results. If there is any change in the canvassing of our results, we would make sure we communicate that. But typically, we've not seen a change much at all from the election to the canvassing. So we will make sure that we communicate out on the organization meeting, because again, that's a big transition, and there are 3 different meetings that are scheduled typically on that night. There's the first part of the organization meeting, then there's the second part where the new board is seated, then there's the third meeting, which is just the regular May 8th board meeting that night. And also, as I shared, at that meeting, we do have our retirees recognition, and also at that night, the May 8th, we'll also be recognizing our 3 outgoing board members too. So make sure that you have either family attend or if they watch on video, because we'll be taking a chance to recognize our board for their work and for their service. The last thing I want to share, on May 5th, we do have our Educator of the Year banquet. That is held at the Q Center in St. Charles, and we do have 5 staff members from Kaneland that are nominated. We have Cindy Babbage, Michael Lavorsi, Daniel Ponzek, Gina Mitchell, and Faye Lakari. And this is an event, again, that's not just a Kaneland event, it's all 9 school districts across Kane County. And again, it's Friday, May 5th at the Q Center, starting at about 6 o'clock, goes till about 9 o'clock. If there are any board members that are interested in attending, please let Mrs. Orfel or myself know, and we can make sure we get you signed up in time. And then the last thing I wanted to share, you received on April 13th as board members the resolution submission form as we go through this process annually, which leads to our board taking action at the joint annual conference. If you want to review, if you have any topics you'd like to share, please let me know, and we can make sure we get this on a one of our May agendas to make sure that we cover it and talk through it as a board before June 22nd, which is the deadline. Those are my updates. Thank you.
Lindsay?
Hello everyone, just a few updates from the high school. On the fine arts side of things, we just had the Fine Arts Festival, not this last weekend, but the weekend before that. So I just wanted to say congrats to any of the students that had their art displayed, and then thank you to everyone in KAI who helped out with it. I was there and I just saw all the hard work they were putting into that, so I just wanted to recognize that. And then on the sports end of things, Kaneland Boys Varsity Baseball has most recently won games against Belvedere, Plano, LaSalle Peru, Ottawa, and Oswego, and then they have an upcoming game tomorrow night against Rochelle. Overall, they are 9-8, and then they are also 4-3 in conference. And then the girls softball team has recently won games against Vernon Hills, Rochelle, and Plano, and they are 5-8 overall and 2-2 in conference. And then for girls soccer, they have most recently won games against Morrison Dunlap, and they have a game upcoming tomorrow night against Rochelle, and then later on this week against Plano. And then for the boys track and field, they've had some huge accomplishments in this last 2 weeks. They won first at the 51st annual Peterson Prep Meet, which is annually held at Kaneland. This meet was against some of their biggest competitors, such as Yorkville, St. Charles North, Sycamore, DeKalb, and then Weston East Aurora High School. And then the boys have also just recently won first in a meet against Morris and Ottawa, and then earned 11th at the Manuka Invitational. And then one more event coming up this Friday. I've said it the last couple meetings, but Relay for Life is this Friday. It starts at 7 p.m. You can stay until 10 p.m. unless you raise like a minimum of $20, and you can stay all the way until 7 a.m. So if you're feeling ambitious and want to stay the night at the high school, then you can do that. And that's all I have for this week. So
Thank you. Thank you. I forgot to ask Dr. Fuchs if she had anything. She does not. Okay. Topics for future agendas from those who will be continuing.
I got topics.
You want topics?
I got topics.
Okay, none of those. Public comments. No one has signed in. Would anyone like to make a public comment this time? Okay, we'll move on. We do have a closed session tonight to discuss two things under the Open Meetings Act, Section 2C1 and Section 2C10. We will be taking action after this closed session, and normally we would keep our tech team here and have them record what happens when we come back in open session. But tonight, it could be a lengthy closed session, so we're going to go ahead and let them go. And the update will be in the minutes and on the district website after it happens. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed
So
session.
moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mr. Gonzalez.
Aye.
Mrs. Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Dr. Lawler.
Aye.
Mr. Minkowski.